Buffs Nation, what is going on? Chilling here in the living room today. Thought I would change things up a little bit. Wearing the Shedeur Sanders jersey. Happy you guys are joining us. Be sure to hit that like. Let us know who's watching in the comments. We're going to be talking recruiting for this episode. Before I get started, really quick shout out to Yo Martez. Use that promo code SCOBUS for 10% off all Buffs and Yo Martez gear. Link in the description. And let's get started. I am joined here by one of our regulars here on the show, Lawrence Collins from Belleville, Michigan. How's it going, Lawrence?
Going good. Thanks for having me on, Dave. Everything's good. Been watching. Hopefully, we get some better outcomes to close out the year with CU, but it's starting to get excited in the recruiting world. So I guess we can focus on, that optimism and what's to come in future classes.
Yes, absolutely. What's great with this program and in college football, there are very few periods of no news. So we got a lot to look forward to as we finish out this year. Obviously, a tough end to conference play. Going up against Arizona, I saw today that they're one of 3 college football teams that have beaten 3 ranked teams. I think Texas and Alabama are the other teams. Good Lord. So we got our work cut out for us with the one, unranked opponent, I guess. Are they still unranked? I think so.
I believe they're ranked. I think they're ranked today, if I'm not mistaken. I think Arizona is ranked. So if they're not, they beat 3 ranked opponents. So it's definitely not going to be a walk in the park to take them down.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in this episode, guys, we'll be talking recruiting. So if you're wondering about the offensive play calling going into this week, we're not going to answer that on this show. No. We're going to be talking recruiting. So there are a lot of players that we need to update you guys on, have a little conversation about. Obviously, with what we're leading with right now, we're going to cover Jordan Seaton as well as Bryce Underwood. But Lawrence, since you're our Michigan guy, you're the guy with the inside local scoop going on there in Belleville. Let's start out with Bryce Underwood. You saw, I guess it was yesterday. Yesterday, did I text you that he put out his top 7? And I'll pull that out here really quick. And you had some interesting comments on that. His top 7: Alabama, Michigan, LSU, Oregon, Penn State, Florida State, and then, of course, Colorado. So what are your thoughts right now on Bryce Underwood? Were you a little surprised to see that, we're still kind of in the running or with all the Antoine Hill commitment stuff? Or, what's your opinion on this whole thing?
So, first give a shout out to Bryce Underwood. I did see him play this past weekend. We're in the playoffs here in Michigan, and they played a tough team. Well, supposed to be tough on the paper, led by Notre Dame commit CJ Carr, and Belleville just carved them up. 65-14 was the final score. Bryce Underwood went 21 for 25 for 312 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, he had a very efficient game. But as far as the top 7 is concerned, Rivals actually just put out a list about an hour ago ranking those teams as far as they ranked it from contenders, somewhere in between contender and pretenders. So according to Rivals has LSU and Michigan as the contenders. They have CU and Oregon as somewhere in between contender and pretender. And they have Penn State, Alabama, and Florida State as pretenders. Personally, I think that list is somewhat accurate. If it was up to me, I would probably put Colorado a little more closer to a contender, despite the Antoine Hill Jr. commit. And I would drop Oregon to a pretender, and maybe put Penn State up there as a somewhere in between contender and pretender, because he did take a visit there. And while he was on that visit, he took some other players on his team from here in Michigan as well. So I wouldn't say that they're a pretender for that reason alone. Oregon, there's been no talk. He hasn't visited Oregon at all. So that was a surprise to see them on the list. It was also a surprise to see Florida State on the list because they haven't, I mean, that came out of nowhere. He hasn't been down there for any visits. I haven't seen any. I'm sure they extended an offer, but he's the number one player in the 25 class. So who doesn't he have an offer from? So it was a little bit surprising to see them on the list. Alabama, I think Bryce did go down to Alabama this past summer to visit once, and he did have a good visit, but they really moved on as far as pressing and being pressed to get his services in the 25 class since then. I think right now, in fact, they have the number one quarterback committed for the 24 class. So, it's very rare you see a team go after the number one quarterback 2 years in a row, consecutive years in a row, because they want to have that guy, whoever the top guy is, be the quarterback for the next 2 or 3 seasons. So with that being said, yeah, you got LSU, very strong contender. He's been down there several times. They also extended an offer to one of his teammates, who I feel personally that is going to be a package deal to land his services as well. That's Adrian Walker, who's an athlete, 3-star athlete from Belleville High School as well. They have
Remind me, where do you project Walker to play as an athlete? What position?
I think he's going to play on the defensive side of the ball. Probably be a safety or nickelback or somewhere on that defensive side in the defensive back. Because the awards that he's nominated for here in Michigan are from the defensive side of the ball. He just so happens to be an athlete to play both sides here and now. But I think he definitely projects as a defensive back going forward, probably at safety. And I think CU offered him, with that being in mind as well, offered him as a safety when he did come to CU to visit when Bryce Underwood was in Boulder as well. So LSU has that offer extended for Adrian Walker, in addition to Bryce Underwood. The third piece of that puzzle, and then this is my opinion, I haven't heard anything, is that Corey Sadler Jr., who's a 26 athlete, who's going to project probably as a receiver, has a Winston Watkins type body frame, and he's that type of athlete. I think he's going to be, a package deal as well. So CU has also offered Corey Sadler Jr. LSU has not extended an offer to Corey Sadler Jr. yet. So that's going to be big. It's just something to watch because, a lot of, these players talk and they want to, put the boys on and things like that. So a lot of times that's a big part of it, in addition to the NIL influence and, the ability to play and who, the roster being built around them. A roster is going to have to be constructed around a player like Bryce Underwood. So is CU going to do that? Is LSU going to do that best? Is Michigan? We're in Belleville, Michigan. We're 15 miles away from Ann Arbor in the Big House. So that is going to continue to be an influence as well, despite what you're hearing about the sign stealing and Jim Harbaugh, blah, 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 blah. I can tell you this here. At least the sentiment here in Michigan is that Jim Harbaugh isn't going anywhere. They're probably going to impose a suspension. Michigan is going to do their best to contest that. Today, in fact, they just handed the Big Ten some other culprits in this sign-stealing whole scheme as well. So they tried to throw Purdue under the bus, Ohio State under the bus, to say, hey, all of these teams are complicit. So before you impose this mighty suspension on our head coach, just keep in mind that these teams were also complicit in this whole sign-stealing thing as well. So with that being said, they're trying to dampen the blow for what the Big Ten and or the NCAA is going to impose against them. To say that we don't want Harbaugh to get suspended, we don't want any kind of penalty to have an impact on us making a run for the national title and impacting our recruiting for the future classes we have coming in. In efforts to get prize fish like Bryce Underwood. So I think he still is going to, have them under heavy consideration. I will say that that's accurately stated that they're going to be a contender, but I will say CU is a little bit higher than what Rivals gives them credit for as well. For the simple fact that he did visit, he brought Adrian Walker. They offer him. Nick Marsh is going to be a player to watch as well. Yes. Bryce Underwood follows Nick Marsh on social media. He follows Nick Marsh's mom on social media, so he's going to have his official visit at CU when the season is over in December. So that'll be something to watch to see if Nick Marsh actually brings Bryce Underwood on his official visit when he comes, or if he commits thereafter. And again, that can definitely influence Bryce Underwood to choose CU over the other schools. But it's a lot of pieces that need to be fit together to see whether or not. But the end of the story is they are definitely in contention for his services.
Man, I love how you lay all that out and you kind of help us read between the lines, with what's going on with all of these top recruits. I think it's huge that you're pointing out that we were, if not the first, one of the first schools to offer Bryce Underwood and all of it, his close, couple friends and teammates. That's a huge deal. Zion's pointed out Sadler's already been on campus 2 times in a short period. Yeah. That's a good sign. Right now, what is your read? There are some things that I want to ask you about Michigan, the state of Michigan. We'll get back to that in a minute. But because we did lead with this as well in the title, I want to make sure we touch on this. Right now, what's your read on Jordan Seaton? There's been some conversation I've been having with some people on Twitter, some of my longtime followers about with some of the comments that he made or the snippets that I read, I didn't ask him about what was going on with the new play call and anything like that. Is this much of a big deal right now? For his recruitment with Bill O'Boyle, Sean Lewis right now being on staff, but not looking like they will be here at the end of the year. How do you read this whole thing right now with him?
Well, obviously that's definitely going to be a question. A top offensive lineman or any offensive recruit, even the Bryce Underwood, will have to know the answer to, prior to them committing, because they want to know what kind of scheme is going to be ran and who's going to be calling the shots. And Jordan Seaton's case, Coach O'Boyle, is he going to be the offensive line coach? Or are you looking to go a different direction by the time I get here? What kind of other offensive linemen are you looking to bring in the fold? What type of NIL possibilities I'm going to have if I, come to your school. So all of that is going to play a factor. I don't think that's going to be a make or break, so to speak, the controversy, so to speak, or the controversy that the media is trying to portray that's going on in Boulder right now. We know that changes were made because the performance wasn't there. The end result wasn't there on Saturday. So yeah, changes are being made. Changes are going to continue to be made in the offseason. And I'm sure the questions that Jordan Seaton had were answered by Coach Prime himself, because, that's who you want to hear from. And he essentially alluded to that in his interview that, a lot of people saying this and that, but Coach Prime told me what the deal was. I'm okay with his answer, moving on. I'm not going to share it with you like you want me to. But, I asked the head coach, the head honcho, what's going on, and he gave me the answer. And then, I'm going to take my, time and make my decision from there. It may already be made. Who knows? But that's the way I look at that.
And I think this is interesting, too. I won't share my screen right now, but because I can just explain it away here really quick. But I'm kind of interested in who has been his, main recruiter, if it indeed, is Coach Prime making that direct contact with him? Maybe it's Corey Phillips, kind of more on the scouting, recruiting side as well, because at least with 24/7, they'll list who they're being recruited by for each school. And out of all the contending schools that are in the top running for Jordan Seaton, we're the only school that doesn't have someone listed there as recruited by. I think that's pretty interesting. And this kind of goes to, I think, to support my theory that Jordan Seaton wasn't ever considering this program because of Bill O'Boyle or Sean Lewis.
That's right.
It's because of Coach Prime, and I think probably has to do with Corey Phillips and some of the more behind the scenes staff. But that's just my read on it. Do you think I know that this is kind of a digression a little bit, but in terms of offensive line coaches, I haven't done a deep dive into this yet, but is there anybody that comes to mind for you right now, and maybe some guys that feel like CU should have on their short list Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just curious here. You're a Big Ten fan. If you got anybody in mind.
I don't really have a particular coach in mind. I just think the talent needs to upgrade. So I don't really think it's coaching. That's the problem on the offensive side. Of course, Oboyo is going to get the heat for it because he coaches the offensive line. But I just think there's a talent gap. There's a lack of talent on the offensive line. And if we go all the way back to when Coach Prime started at JSU, his first season there, when in the COVID season, they finished 4-3. That was one of the weak spots of that team as well. That offensive line was atrocious. And he alluded to that. I think he did an interview with Club Shay Shannon Sharp. He alluded to that when he took over JSU, that's one of the things he had to do is just wipe that offensive line anew. And he tried to do that, in the portal in the limited time that he had to, try to build a line from the portal and some of the recruits that were already committed there for this season. But, it's still a work in progress. So that's what it boils down to me, more so than the actual name for a coach. So you had the best coach, but if you don't have the talent on the field, you're going to get what we have right now, which is, a weak offensive line. So, with the addition of Tyler Brown, you're going to have another a season in behind Van Wells and everyone else, honestly. You probably have to just watch that thing anew and just get better talent in there to block for Shedeur. And that, sometimes that's the swings that we took in a portal this season on the offensive line side, we can pretty much conclude that those were misses. So, what is Coach Prime has sort of alluded to this, that it's very hard to hit a home run in a transfer portal on an offensive lineman because most of them stay at their schools for 3 and 4 years. So that's going to take time to get right and perfect to the level that the offensive line was Coach Prime's last year at JSU, where it was one of the better offensive lines in the SWAC. So that's going to take time, more recruiting cycles and, things of that nature, and just getting better players in the portal, which is going to be hard to do because most top dominant offensive line don't hit the transfer portal, but we'll see.
I think it's interesting too that, thank you guys in the comments pointing out that looks like Tim Brewster is having a big time role in Jordan Seaton's recruitment as well.
I can definitely see that. Yeah.
And we'll just have to see who they bring in. I think it will be somebody with experience, but let's get back to some of the other recruiting news. You saw, I think yesterday or earlier today, 4-star offensive tackle in the 2025 class committed to Iowa. Nick Brooks decided to decommit. Then he posts, just recently that he did get an offer from CU to come join Antoine Hill, maybe Bryce Underwood, some other players here in 2025. This young man is 6'7", 345. This guy is absolutely massive. And I do wonder, Immaculate, another guy I follow on Twitter, been on a couple shows with him on some other channels, more of a Big 12 guy. But he brought up the idea of bringing in, why am I forgetting his name now? The offensive coordinator for Iowa, not as the offensive coordinator, but to coach the O-line because, they can run the ball. What is his name? Yeah. Ferentz, whatever his last name is.
Ferentz is the head coach. Ferentz is the head coach at Iowa. Oh, his son. Okay.
Yeah. But because there was that whole clause because he's the coach's son. That all that sort of stuff. But that would be interesting. Bringing somebody in that has experience building lines in the Big Ten. I mean, I'm fine with that. I just don't think we'll see another coach come up from the G5 level. If that happens, I'm going to be a little concerned. But have you had a chance to look into Nick Brooks at all?
I haven't had much. I did see that he did, decommit from Iowa, and he posted his offer from CU. the more the merrier at this point. Yeah, I think it's gonna have to be like take your armor on and gather as much as offensive linemen as you can this offseason, and hopefully you hit on 5 that that can protect Shedeur better than he is being protected today. So that's gonna have to be the approach, because you never know. I mean, like I said, we swung and we missed on these offensive linemen that we tried to get from the portal this offseason. It was, we got guys from G5 schools that were all conference and this and that. And they just haven't panned out for the most part. So I'm all with just grabbing as many as you can and getting a power 5 out there that hold up and be dominant.
Yeah.
We just haven't seen that. So, yeah, whether this guy from Iowa is the trick, or whether we need to get Kirk Ferentz's son to coast the line, whatever the formula is. And I'm sure Coach Prime has a plan. So I'm not worried that if they do decide to part ways with O'Boyle or Sean Lewis, that he's not going to have, already have in mind who he, wants to replace those guys. And hopefully it leads to them recruiting better talent at those upfront offensive line positions. So we'll see what happens.
No doubt. There was one other offensive line recruit that I did want to touch on here really quick, if I can find my right note. And guys, you got to go follow Matt H on ScoBuffs22. He's basically my go-to for keeping up with the recruiting news. I'm going to butcher his name. I believe he is Samoan. No, maybe he's not Samoan. I don't know. Lincoln Apuli Jr. He has been invited back for a second week in a row. So he'll be back on campus for this game against Arizona. Let me find the other note. I mean, this is another big boy. He is in the class of 24, 6'5", 320 pounds. This guy would enter in as being one of the already one of the largest linemen on our roster, come January or whatever. Hopefully he's able to get here early on campus. But that would be something that, in addition to Jordan Seaton, would help bolster this line. Because right now I think we're having a little bit more success getting at least commits right now from the defensive front 7. I think King, why am I butchering his name or forgetting his name right now? King Joseph Edwards the third. I think he's a lock, man. I do. He's a guy I think that will play the edge position. And I think we got some other linebackers that are coming to visit again as well. Of course, I think we're in the running for Elijah Melendez, who's one of the top linebackers. And then 3-star edge Jordan Ochoa. 3-star edge, 6'4", 325. So even the guys that we're bringing in, like size-wise, significantly bigger, definitely than guys that we've seen in the recent past for CU. But even looking back at this past class as well, I think we're going to be getting a higher level of just overall of high school player coming in here, even with some of the coaching staff in flux or in transition a little bit.
And even beyond the recruits that you named off that are high school recruits, you got to remember Coach Prime is still aiming to make his bread and butter in the portal until he begins to get those top 5 and top 10 classes. So be on the lookout for that as well, to have a top 3 portal transfer class in the portal, and especially on that offensive and defensive line, because I think it's going to take more experience. We can't rely on those freshman offensive linemen and underclass offensive linemen to come in and step in and do a better job than what's being on the field, what's being put out on the field right now, which are upperclassmen. So again, that's going to be a difficult task to get high level skilled offensive linemen from the portal, but look for them to hit that portal hard, just as hard as they did this past offseason, and have a top 3 class and get maybe 1 or 2 starters at least on that for offensive line from the portal as well. So Yeah, we'd be remiss if we forget that. But yeah, it is good that they, get all these, because at some point you're going to have to reverse that 40-40-20 trend and rely
Yes.
more on your, high school classes and have a routine top 5 high school recruiting class like the big boys, the Alabamas, the Georgias routinely do, Ohio States every, year in and year out, having a top 5 recruiting class and not being that reliant on a transfer portal. So it's going to take time to get there, but we will eventually. And it is a good start that a lot of these top recruits have a CU in their top 7, a top 5, a top 10 even to start. You have to start from somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. This is a little bit of a digression, but I'll tie it back. But just like I was saying earlier this week, if we compare with where Coach Prime was taking over this team,
yep.
we were getting destroyed pretty much every game.
Yep.
In 2022, I think there was one single-digit loss that we had. Everything else is like 20 points and above. So we're losing big. Okay.
Yep.
Now in his first year, starting from scratch, we've won some close games. We're losing some closer games. We've only been blown out really once or twice. Not too bad. But I think this next year, you'll start to see us win a lot more of these closer games. That's just the next step. We start winning more, but some of the games are closer. And then the next phase we'll reach is, what Coach Prime preaches all the time is, domination. What all these top programs start to do. So everything's a process. The same thing is happening with recruiting. First, we need to just be mentioned, in the consideration for some of these players, and eventually we're going to start to build momentum where we're getting a surprise here, a flip there. Then it's like, okay, we're going to start seeing ourselves in the running for some of these, top 300 players way more often than what we've seen, in the recent past. Top 100 players, top 50 players, all that. So
you got to remember that when that happens, I'll just add to that. The players, those top players are your best recruits. So it's going to lead to more and more top players, and that's how you get flips. So a lot of these names that we were talking about today are contingent and may come with other top players as well. So Jordan Seaton may lead to a Bryce Underwood, may lead to a Nick Marsh, may lead to a player that's committed to another school that could potentially flip, a Boo Carter or CL3. You don't know. A lot of these players talk and they say, hey, man, they look and see that other top players are committed to a particular school, and they start to scratch their head like, I may look good over there. That may be a better scenario situation for me than where I'm currently committed.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell my buddy Zion, I'm like, it doesn't mean anything until you sign on a dotted line. And that's even the case with Bryce Underwood. He's going to announce on January 6th his commitment, but he still is going to have another whole year before he plays. He's not going to be an early enrollee or reclassify or anything like that because he technically should be a 2026 graduate, and he's graduating in 25. So it'll be, I don't think he's going to be, a 24 reclassify or anything like that. He's stuck in that 25 class, at least for now. But even if he commits or wherever he commits, announces his commitment on the January 6th, there could be time to get him to flip. I mean, it just happened with the last good quarterback we had out of Michigan, Dante Moore. He was committed to Oregon.
Yeah.
And then he flipped to UCLA when Dan Lanning, not Dan Lanning, the offense coordinator, he was the offense coordinator at Oregon. He's head coach at Dillingham. When he left, he switched his commitment to UCLA. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of things can happen between now and then. But yeah, definitely, it goes back to say that CU is definitely in the running for Bryce Underwood and a lot of other top recruits that are currently today committed to other schools. So we'll see what happens. I'm actually hoping that he goes to CU. I think that'd be huge.
Hey, I'm approaching this whole thing just like with this channel. Just with open hands, man. I'm never gonna complain. If we got a stacked quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, stacked special teams. Man, wouldn't that be great? Have some stacked special teams. But man, guys, there's so many questions here in the comments. I'll try and get to a couple.
All right.
Yeah. Yo Creo saying, do you see our 4-star quarterback is reclassifying? Is that Antoine Hill? Is he reclassifying?
So there was after he committed, he did have a call with Shador. And Shador told him,
okay,
you should do what I told you to do since you committed. That's what he said to Antoine Hill. Now you should do what I told you to do. So that could mean reclassifying. That we don't know what that is, but
if that happens,
we'll see. We'll see.
And I love that. With Michigan State, who are some guys from that line that you think will be targeted by CU in the portal? Because obviously that's going to be an interesting case where a lot of guys are going to be entering that portal. Maybe that necessarily wouldn't if there wasn't so much change with the leadership of the program. What's your read on all that right now?
So today we have Keyshawn Blastock, who has entered the portal under the 30-day window that he had due to a coaching change. So he has been offered by CU. Keyshawn Blastock is about 6'5", 300 pounds. He's played tackle. He actually committed to Michigan State. He committed to Michigan State as an offensive tackle, but I think he projects as a guard if he were to come to CU. I think he plays.
We need those.
Need everything. So, but yeah, he does have an offer for CU. He did visit this past weekend at Ole Miss, and I think the weekend prior to that, he did take a visit to NC State as well. He has about 20 Power 5 offers. So, it's going to be pretty hard to get him, but the first thing first is to get him on campus to see what happens from there. With the recruiting staff, but we'll see. So he has an offer. That's one guy from that line we're seeking. From the active roster. I can't really say who else is going to hit the portal in the offseason. I don't even know who's going to be the head coach. I'm hearing. I even heard Sean Lewis's name being, mentioned as a candidate, not a likely candidate, but he is a candidate. I personally think that it'll probably be PJ Fleck.
Interesting.
If
that would make sense.
I think it's going to be PJ Fleck. This is me personally, but as far as what kind of roster turnover that amounts to, we'll see. Because a new coach they can come in there and get rid of all the players as well. So we'll see what happens there. But Keyshawn Blastock is the player that CU is after. Now they have another offensive lineman. I think Andrew Dennis, the 4-star offensive tackle that committed to Michigan State, who decommitted after the coaching change after Mel Tucker's firing. And I believe he has a CU offer as well. He's from here in Michigan, I think on the west side of the state, like Muskegon or something like that. But
okay,
another potential grab, a flip, if you will, that would be if they were to land him. They're already after Nick Marsh, who was I spoke on before, that was committed to Michigan State, a receiver, 6'3", 200 pound, nickname Megatron. I don't call him that, but that's his nickname. And he, again, I did mention that he has his official visit. I want to say December 15th, 13th through 15th. He's going to be at CU for the entire weekend, if I'm not mistaken, when he does visit in December. So it's looking very good that for them to flip Marsh. Andrew Dennis, I believe he has an offer extended, but I don't know about a visit or anything like that. But that can change. He may come to visit in December. And then, like I said, with Keyshawn Blastock, everybody wants him. So CU has extended that offer. I don't know if they've had talks with him or if and when he's going to come on campus for a visit, but he has offers from everywhere because he was the number 1 JUCO offensive tackle prior to committing to Michigan State. So those are the players right now. There are some other players on the roster that will make additions to good additions to any staff, let alone CU. We have Charles Brantley, defensive back, who CU extended an offer for earlier in the offseason, but he came back to Michigan State. So, but he's a Florida boy though. So, you have to watch out for those Florida schools coming after him if he does decide to transfer. I think he'll be a grad transfer if he does transfer. So, he'll pretty much have open season to choose anywhere at any time if that's the case. So that would be a good addition. You still have Antonio Gates Jr. on the roster as well, who's not getting that much playing time today. So that's someone to watch. He's not a tight end. He's like a bigger receiver, sort of like the Javon Antonio build, 6'2", like 200. He's not really fast, but he's a big. He does big body, smaller defensive backs and things like that. So whether or not he's going to stay at Michigan State, I don't know, but he'd be a good piece to build on if he were to hit the portal in the offseason. There are a couple of the players as well. Obviously, you want to, just like I said, at this point, you're shooting darts to see if you can land on 5 better offensive linemen than what we have at CU right now. So, yeah, you can nitpick and just go get a big body as well. But those are the names that stand out for me on that roster that may or may not hit some of them, like I said, have hit the portal. So you're looking at some of them could potentially hit the portal in the offseason, depending on who they decide being a permanent head coach.
Do you think that we will have, I guess, if we are able to win 2 out of our last 3, get to bowl eligibility, that could change things. But right now, it's like, would you expect if they do make a change with the offensive line coach, OC, all that, with what we expect? Do you think that will be done before early National Signing Day in December? Or, because I'm wondering, like, okay, what if a player like Jordan Seaton decides to delay his decision till January? Is that a good sign that he's just waiting to see who they're filling the staff with, at CU?
That's a good question. So I think the impact players at those positions, offensively, offensive line, they would know who's going to be the coach, even if it hasn't been officially announced or decided. So at the end of the season, like you said, depending on whether or not CU is bowl eligible and they play in a bowl game, I think if it impacts their position, they're going to know, okay, such and such is coming in, even though this hasn't been publicly announced. So I think the player who is going to be a need-to-know basis when it happens. If the player needs to know, they're going to know. They're going to ask the question, hey, is this going to be in? Hey, Coach Prime, don't worry about it, dog. I'm going to have coming in, and they're gonna get you together. So I think that's how that's going to work. It's going to be a need-to-know basis, whether we, the public, know who's fired or replaced. The recruits will know by the time they make their decision. If especially if the decision is going to depend on who's going to be offensive line / offense coordinator.
No doubt. Got a question here. Do you expect Warren Sapp to still join the staff this spring? Do you think T.O. might join the staff? Do you think some of these guys might help out with recruiting, even if they're not on the staff officially? What's your read on other possible coaching additions?
Yeah, well, as far as recruiting, I'll hit on that first. So, yeah, I think those names are always going to help out on recruiting, whether or not they're on the CU staff or not. As far as when and if Sapp joins the staff, he has to fulfill his requirement and get that degree first. So we don't know if he's actively doing that. He says he is, but that could be taking one class at a time. That could be, he's going to help in a capacity, whatever capacity he can, until he becomes an official coach. But until then, I think he's going to continue to help how he's helping right now. Just have a visit on campus and work with the team for a week here and there. And honestly, for a lot of these ex-players, they rather have that freedom anyway. Sapp, he does want to coach eventually, so I can see him actually joining the staff once he fulfills that requirement in an official capacity. But T, on the other end, he wants to have that freedom to come and go as he pleases. He doesn't want to be a coach and actually, wear the CU paraphernalia and be on the payroll and things like that. He wants to have that ability. Okay, I can work with Javon Antonio this week, show him how to blah, blah, blah. Now this week I can work with, Travis, blah, 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 and then I'm out. I don't have to, I don't have to. I'm here on my own will, my own fruition. Some players like to have, be in that capacity more so than actually be on the staff as a coach. So I think you'll see a mixture of both going forward. When Sapp fulfills this, his obligation to get that degree, the requirement, then he'll be on the staff. Until then, he'll continue to help out CU in the capacity he's done at, to this point.
Yeah, I kind of wonder because I hope Sal Sinceri stays on the staff. I do kind of wonder if he kind of came over here like as a favor for Prime with who was the first defensive line coach that we had that left after like a month to go to the Ravens? What was his name?
Was it Patrick Hill?
No, or I think it was the Vikings. I think it might have been
went to the Vikings. I think it's Patrick Hill because he came from LSU, I believe. He was at LSU. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder, I don't know. I hope he stays here long term. You just got I just always wonder, just because of how old he is or whatever, if he's kind of in this for the long run or not, or if he's I'm going to do Prime a solid and do this for a year and see what happens, or a couple of years. Do you still expect him to kind of, if Warren Sapp were to come onto the staff, as a lot of us expect, you think both of them will stick around? I forget. Is there a limit? Is there a limit to how many coaches you can have on the roster, on the coaching staff?
I believe there is, but I wouldn't expect Sapp to come in as the defensive line coach off rip. I think he'll come in as an analyst and then progressively working his way up to having a whole defensive line. So that's what I expect. I could be wrong, and as soon as Sapp gets his degree, Coach Prime say, "Hey, defense line yours," and it's up to him. But I just personally think that he would initially start as an analyst and progressively take on more responsibility, and work his way up to
I think that's how Ed Reed started out too, right? He started out as an analyst for Miami, or was he in a different kind of role, like a special role, like an Ed Reed type role? I forget.
I think it was just kind of like I don't think he was
or most dependable unit or phase of the game. Over these last two games, and I think that's because Coach Sal, man, he knows what he's doing. Him and Nick Williams deserve a lot of credit, and we're laying the foundation to have a fantastic year next year in the Big 12 with another portal and high school class round with all these guys coming up here. So Eric Morse saying here he was an advisor to Miami. That's right. Thank you for that clarification. Lastly, I guess I'll end with this. I know we got to be wrapping up. Always appreciative of your time, Lawrence. Cam McKell. He is announcing on my birthday. That is Thanksgiving, November 23rd. Man, I feel good about this one just because we already got a Montre Bradford. Yeah. Is that what you're expecting right now?
I am expecting the Cam McKell commit to CU as well. I think he may have some crystal walls to CU. I'm not sure. I have to go check that. I know LaMason Waller definitely is crystal balled as well. Yes. To commit to CU as well. But I'm feeling good about that. I think, like I said, the more the merrier. Just pile up on high level athletes. And continue to keep that ball rolling as far as getting these commits to come to CU. But I definitely think that Cam McKell is I wouldn't say it's not a lock until they sign on the dotted line, but as close to a lock as you could be to becoming a CU buff.
Exactly. You still got to recruit your commits too, like you said, with these 25 commits. Yep. Nothing is guaranteed. Anything can happen, even a commitment date, like we've seen with Cormani. Those things can push out, things can change, and but we're building something here. I think really solid, and the fact that we're
most excited to see
that is for sure. And CU is going to be better off getting more Michigan guys on this team in the coming years. So thank you again for your time. Thank you again, everybody, for contributing in the chat. This was a lot of fun. Be sure to hit that like on the way out. I think I'll be back later tonight. Maybe I'll come up with a short list of some OCs that I would look at if I was running things. Some offensive line coaches. Maybe I'll do a little bit of research, give you guys a top 5. But I'll be back later tonight, I think. So y'all be sure to hit that bell for notifications on when I go live. And as always, everybody, let's go Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.